Okay, I hope that everyone has saved their work to the cloud so they can concentrate on this webinar, Cloud Computing in Education. So, put down your assignment. If you're saving it, Google Docs is great, right? I mean, with Google Docs, you just write a line and then it automatically saves. Where does it go? It goes to the cloud. Today, we're talking about cloud computing in education. We've got a fantastic guest with us today, the Student of the Year Award winner for our summer graduation, Mr. Karl Alexander from our MSc in Information Technology program. A warm welcome to you today, Karl. How are you?
Not bad. A bit cold, but thanks for having me here.
Exactly. And where are you based at the moment? What are you doing?
At the moment, I'm in Canada, Ontario, Canada. Technologist, computer systems, programs at the college. So.
Nice. Now, what drew you to taking an MSc in Information Technology in the first place, and how did you end up at University of Liverpool Online?
First off, it's professional development. If you're in IT, you're always looking for something to improve on. If you love IT, you're always looking to learn something new. As per the University of Liverpool, the draw involved the ability to pick your courses based on where your interests actually lied, and have an ability to go through and just handpick. I like this course. It has enough practical element for me, and I'm able to pick it and go as I please. So that was interesting, and also the global classroom. That was important as well.
Nice, exactly, and I'm sure this webinar we've got prospective students from all across the globe at the moment. So it's very nice. You're doing MSc in Information Technology. There's some elective modules, what we call them, and allows you to kind of specialize a bit on your program and pick what you like doing. And one of the things that really stuck out in your program for you, and that you dedicated quite a bit of your resources and time to in your research, was cloud computing. And that's what we're going to discuss today, Karl, some of your research into how cloud computing is used in higher education and education in general. We're going to kind of look at that landscape, and then we're going to kind of drill down to some specifics in terms of what you did for your research or dissertation project. So for any prospective students, this will give you a really great idea of how we kind of interact in the classrooms, how we look to discuss issues and critically think about issues. For those of you that are students, you'll already know how we do that. So this might provide you with some excellent stimulation for your research topics, your final research topic. And Karl was also a guest of ours in our research project success webinar that you can check out if you want to learn how to write a great dissertation. So thank you very much for that. This is a Q&A session, guys, so please have your questions ready for Karl in 25 minutes, half an hour or so. Any questions about the course or about cloud computing, what we're talking about today? We've got Hugo in the background. He's our producer, and he's going to field those questions to me. We're going to put them to Karl around the half an hour mark. So please pay attention. If you're a student, I will expect you to come up with a really well-informed question around the half an hour mark. Thank you very much. So the first question we've got for you today, Karl, we're going to start nice and easy here, is we're going to look at really the benefits. What do you feel are the benefits of cloud computing for educational institutions and for education in general?
Cloud computing it's vast. It's one of the greatest achievements that happened in IT over the past couple of years. Cost, of course, is a big factor. Having the ability to execute many environments at a limited cost is very important. Efficiencies, of course, directly ties into the ability to be efficient. Having the ability to use, if we're talking about infrastructure, to use resources that would normally be sitting idle for a long period of time and create much more efficiencies. For students specifically, having the ability to test as much as possible in a safe environment. Being able to bring up virtual environments as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And just improve avenues for deployment across the board for students. The more experiential learning you have, the better it is that you actually grasp that when it comes to IT, in my experience.
That's nice. I mean, this is a theme that's going to come up in today's discussion, is this idea of experiential learning that you're very much for. Can you just flesh out that concept a bit? Do you really mean that IT professionals or just laymen kind of get their hands dirty and experiment with cloud solutions, software prototypes? Can't it get quite complicated with so much stuff out there and available?
Yeah, it works both ways, laymen as well as specific IT students. So for instance, at my day-to-day in our programs, it's pretty hands-on. There's a lot of network development, networking, application development, which requires a lot of resources. And the best way to provide that solution becomes a virtual solution. A virtual solution tied to students' personal computers becomes, pretty bogged down after a while, and you need much more powerful resources. So a big part of learning those technologies like Microsoft servers and Linux servers and developing applications at scales involve a lot of resources, and you have to do it, practice it to actually grasp it a lot better.
Exactly. I mean, like anything, practice definitely makes perfect as well. Especially, with adult learning and online learning, in higher education, our students aren't millennials necessarily or born with a smartphone in their hand. This is technology that we all have to get used to. Our demographic for our students is 35 to 50 years old, the baby boomer demographic, as we like to say, and this is this is a demographic that's used to technology but still has some work to put in to experience that technology in terms of finding out how it can be used for their businesses, their teams, and their offices. So thank you very much for that. Now, how do you feel that cloud computing is currently used and exploited in education? What's the kind of main model? I mean, I know for our university we've got Office 365, I suppose, but how are organizations using it?
No, and that's a very interesting question, because when I started my research, one of the things that I noticed is that it's prevalent, it exists, and institutions as a whole, have it embedded within their operations. So, for instance, software as a service, as you mentioned, Office 365, the G Suite, which is the Google platform of services as well for mail and productivity software. But what I also had to look at, what I wanted to look at, was how are institutions using it within their infrastructure as one concept, and how is it being embedded within curriculum, which directly falls into my research area. How is it being taught versus how is it being used to teach, and how is it being used in general to provide efficiencies at the actual organizational level. So within institutions, within education, you have those different areas. You have the software, you have the platforms being used, and you do have infrastructure in a smaller capacity in data centers being used to deploy infrastructure for colleges and for universities, for institutions. But predominantly it seems to be at the software side, which is 365 and which your Google delivery patterns.
Exactly. That's what we're familiar with, but obviously in the terms of the pedagogy and the teaching, we're teaching the next generation of information technologists to kind of be more sophisticated and kind of install these infrastructures, this public cloud IaaS to lease infrastructure and PaaS services for research and learning opportunities. Yeah. So this is very nice indeed. Do you think anyone's really doing this particularly well at the moment, being such a nascent industry? Do you have really any best-in-class examples of anyone that's really employing this to its maximum effect?
From going through my research, going through my dissertation, spending time gathering as much data as possible, it's apparent that a lot of educational institutions are making use of cloud computing, again, up to the software side of the deployment. That's pretty much commonplace currently. In terms of a best-in-class, I haven't come across anyone who's deployed infrastructure, who's deployed platform at both the educational institution level to run operations and at the curriculum level to actually teach how to implement it and use it to deliver as well.
I mean, from an organizational level, if we flip that question into reverse, okay, schools, organizations, educational organizations aren't adopting this quick enough, or, they need, dedicated services, and, you need to be taught this stuff. On the other side, are there certain businesses, like we mentioned Google, we mentioned Office 365, that are really exploiting the education market, even if the education market doesn't know how to use those tools?
No, there's tons of businesses in terms of the public space. You have companies like Netflix. The entire infrastructure for Netflix runs in the public cloud, which is deployed globally in instance. So there's many companies that actually runs the infrastructure on the cloud. Companies like Instagram. Instagram was actually inverted in the cloud, which offers the ability to scale immediately based on how your program, how your app actually gains traction. in the industry. So there's a lot that's happening in the actual public space where many companies are taking advantage of the benefits that cloud computing actually delivers.
Exactly, and this is not going to stop anytime soon. We're talking about individual educators here as well. For those of you that might want to dive, a bit deeper and look at, some of these cloud computing stuff from a technology perspective. We had a lovely webinar, Karl, about a month ago with our Director of Studies from our computing program, Dr. Franz Koenen, and our big webinar on big data drilled more directly into some of these systems, looking at Hadoop, looking at Amazon cloud services as well. So if this inspires you to kind of learn more how to harness the power of computing, please go back and watch some of those webinars. There's a lot of great information in there as well, and some research topics. Now, for those of us that are educators, we might have some people on our call today that have been on the EDD or Educational Doctorate Program that we offer at University of Liverpool Online. How can they learn to harness the power of cloud computing for their students?
There's a couple parts, a couple ways to get about it. The cloud space includes, two major platforms. You have the public space, and then you have the private space. A lot of the public space leaders like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, IBM tends to offer you a free platform to get in, dive directly into all of their services with limited usage per monthly installments. And you're able to go in, have a look at all the services that they have at the infrastructure level, at the platform level, if you're an application developer, or at the software level as well, to have the system directly ready to go from day one. So that gives you a great opportunity to get your feet wet, to get in there, get tested. If you want to go a bit deeper, then there is the private cloud platforms. When you get to that deployment model where you have OpenStack, CloudStack, Eucalyptus, OpenDevelop, a lot of very well-developed open source projects that is fully, updated, fully serviced, fully featured, that mimics what the public cloud offer you and gives you that flexibility to build it however you see fit and distribute that to your classes, to your students. So there's a lot of avenues there.
Exactly. I mean, there's also, in the next 10, 20 years after, the next generation of children have come through who've all been playing Minecraft and learning how to code, this won't be as big an issue going forward, as we'll have a generation of people who are kind of born understanding the kind of capacity of cloud computing. As we drill down, to be more specific, Karl, and looking at your research, obviously, what kind of why were you passionate to study this research? What is it about cloud computing in education that you enjoy so much and that you wanted to explore? What was your personal kind of connection to this?
My personal connection ties back to having an educational background, being a high school teacher for a period of time, being a college professor, part-time professor as well, and understanding the resources that's required to deliver many courses practically at least at the collegiate level in Canada. So that requires a deep hands-on approach, which ties it directly to resource use. And the cloud offers that capacity, but not just the capacity, but the ability to orchestrate that fully. So for me, it was interesting to find out, like, what are we doing within the actual educational sphere within my region, at a collegiate to collegiate level. How have we introduced cloud computing? How are we actually teaching cloud computing, or delivering it, or making use of it in a manner that is feasible? So it started, based on having the ability to see what is required at that level and know that there's a solution that exists that's not being fully utilized to actually, bolster what you currently do.
I agree. So specifically, what did you look into in your dissertation in terms of the subject? What areas did you explore around cloud computing?
Yeah. So going back to my research, I looked at the concepts and how concepts are actually being delivered within those institutions. So that includes every form of cloud computing, whether it was software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. Whether they were using private cloud, public cloud services. I wanted to know, is it being used and how is it being utilized and after pulling that information, dissect on whether it's being delivered and done based on what standards currently exist for cloud computing out there in the actual industry that's using it a lot compared to the education side and delivery side.
Amazing. You determine what's currently being used before looking more closely at the IS service model, the foundation that enables both the platform and the software as a service. So, I'm interested to see what kind of conclusions did you draw? What did you find from your study?
It was interesting. Again, it's cloud computing it's so broad. The scope is so broad, and in Canada it's so broad. So it was important to narrow the scope to original perspective. What I've noticed, which is one of the things that I've expected, is that there are instances of cloud computing that is deployed across institutions, especially as the software as a service, that most institutions are actually using some of that as well. A few institutions had an actual course dedicated to cloud computing. So one of the things that I did in my research is that I created a scale to identify, do you have a program of studies dedicated to cloud computing? Do you have a course? Do you just talk about it as a topic here and there within your other courses? And identify, what it is. The last aspect of this was having the ability to have programs and students build an actual platform to test and practice cloud computing skills that's affordable and can be done at scale. And one of the things that came out of my research is that it was possible to do this with pretty much affordable equipment, using the open source private cloud systems.
So I mean, it's not just a privilege for those of us in what we say, quote unquote, developed countries. This is an option for people maybe in emerging markets, with equipment not as accessible.
Definitely.
I mean, cost effectiveness is also important in those areas in terms of storage. So maybe this is a way to kind of take away reliance on hardware and push it to the cloud. Lovely here. Most institutions already use some aspects of cloud computing. Most institutions don't have a cloud computing course discipline. Interesting. As we move with the times, we've just put on a whole new suite of short programs at the University of Liverpool Online. One of those programs is big data decision making, data for visualization and warehousing, cybercrime prevention. These are very specific, niche courses that you'll have to know your code in order to get submitted on these courses. But I think this is what you're saying, Karl. Educational institutions have to kind of develop to kind of harvest this knowledge and kind of train the new generation of IT professionals on these disciplines. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, most definitely. It's not just the future; it's the present. It's where we've been for a while, and it's essentially where we're going to go. So it's important that future students, future IT professionals understand how it works. How can you use it when you go out to your new jobs and your new positions?
Interesting. So what do you feel then is the future for cloud computing? Is everything going to be on the cloud?
The cloud it's uncapped, as I like to say. The future is however you paint it to be. Everything that we currently run within our traditional infrastructures can be replicated within the cloud. If you're concerned about privacy, security, you have the option to go for the private deployment, which offers you that flexibility to keep your data center. But a big aspect of cloud computing is making management a lot more feasible for your current infrastructure. Orchestrating the use of all your equipment, all your servers, all your networks, bringing it into an area that makes it snap to configure. So it's as much as you want to take it as an educational institution, you could get as far as you intend to go.
Wow, this is amazing, and there's such a far-reaching implications, and we're getting some great questions in that kind of look at some different applications for cloud computing across the board, as we have members of our audience from all types of industry. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, you're probably on the cloud. So for those of us that see an opportunity ahead of us, we did a webinar the other week, as we said, on big data. There's going to be a shortage of something like 1.8 million big data jobs over the next 5 to 10 years as people leave their old positions and a whole new raft of skills is desired. What kind of opportunities do you see then for technologists and educators within this field?
Like the implementation of cloud computing, opportunities are pretty endless, pretty boundless as well. In the public sphere, if you want to work with the public providers, you have cloud consultants, cloud architect, cloud sales reps, and a lot of these positions include a fair amount of technical ability to get in and understand how to take a current business, their solution, their infrastructure, and help them create a migration plan to the cloud and to show how what you currently have can't be more efficient in a cloud environment, in a cloud architecture.
Exactly. And who would have ever thought you'd hear the phrase, "Dad, when I grow up, I want to be a cloud consultant." You know? These job titles, they didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. I'm an online events marketing specialist. The job had, I still have to explain the job title now, but before these jobs didn't exist. I'm doing events in the online space. If I tried to describe this in the 80s to someone, they'd look at me and say, you're nuts. So in terms of cloud computing, what could be happening in the next 10, 20, 30 years is beyond even our wildest imaginations. So there's plenty of opportunities in the space. So you studied on the program, you put in the hard work and graph, you put in so much hard work, Karl, that you got Student of the Year. So congratulations for that. I want to know your formula and how you did it as I try to finish my dissertation from my MBA. But how did the program help you understand this kind of crazy emerging landscape? What kind of skills did it equip you with, and how did it kind of make you realize your value and how you could contribute within this landscape?
That's a good question. I don't think I could deliver a secret to you. I think it's just hard work, and you just have to put it in, put in the time, and you get it done. But specifically with the program, one of the things that happened was in my third year, the university introduced a course in cloud computing. And prior to that, I had some contact with cloud computing, thought about it for a second. But that course offered an opportunity to dive deeply into research, to go out there and have a look to see what existed as public offerings and what type of private offerings exist and what can you actually do within the cloud. And to me, it became apparent that it is boundless. Like, there wasn't any limits as to what you were able to take from your current infrastructure, from your current data center, and move it across to the cloud. From a security perspective, it's also there. Compliance was always one of the major areas where the type of information you have, the type of services you're going to run, where it will reside, and a lot of the public housings they've solved a lot of those questions by having data centers distributed globally in Europe, in Asia, North America. So if you're not in the cloud, you have an excuse, essentially. There's this one way, whether it's software, whether it's platform, whether it's infrastructure. There's hybridization, where you move some of your infrastructure over to the cloud. So UOL and that course specifically, put me on that path to get out there and research and actually build some of those hypothetical solutions to figure out how this is possible and to actually have a vision as to, this is actually possible and you can actually make that roadmap and move what you have, pretty seamlessly to those infrastructure.
And it's good. It shows that experiential learning is built into the course. If you come and join our computer programs, this year, beginning of next year, then what you have is you have a cloud computing service that's there for you. We give, I believe it's Amazon Cloud service accounts to all of our new students, and then they are allowed to build portfolios of what we call architecture portfolios, where they can build pieces of code and things, and instead of just writing a written dissertation or looking purely theoretically, our students are able to actually try to technically contribute through practical, cloud-based solutions, bits of software prototypes, etc. So a lot of scope there. Thank you very much, Karl, for reaching through all of those questions. Quite a thorough and whirlwind tour of cloud computing as it is, and we've got a whole bunch of questions from audience members whose knowledge ranges from educators wanting to use it in their class to high-level IT professionals who have a deeper understanding of the deployment systems that you can operate. So Karl, let's go through some of those questions now and see if we can take them on. Now, I haven't looked through these before, so let's look for them. From the floor, how do you think cloud computing will affect educational learning materials, books, etc., library resources, journal resources, study planning?
I think a lot of the publishers have moved towards an online environment, and for those institutions, it's about storage, deployment,
Yes.
availability, resources, and it has already trickled into those holdings in terms of where they store the material, how they store the material, how quickly you can access the material, how much you can actually use. So it is being used within those fields already.
Okay, let's have a look at some of the other questions. Now, for the floor, what will be the effect on software development and hardware requirements?
That's a good one. Um, if you go public, hardware requirements are essentially no. You have rolling updates. Amazon gives you whatever advantage they have with their hardware. So if they introduce new hardware, the benefits are directly related to you. Compared to running your own data center, where maybe every 5 years you have a hardware upgrade plan, um, you get away from that when you get into the cloud. In terms of software, the same thing applies. Platforms, multiple platforms, all your major development platforms, your Java developers, your Node developers, your PHP developers, your .NET developers. It's all available to you, and it's all upgradable. It's all managed directly by your providers. So it's
Wow.
it's a lot less for you to do as a systems admin, as a developer, in terms of having to build the infrastructure, the environment before you start the code. You can go directly into coding, or you can go directly into deployment as a system admin.
Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. Now, isn't it true also, that I was learning from Franz that, Hadoop allows people to pull in, congregate processing power as well. So that kind of can get away with some of the hardware requirements because these systems can kind of double down on processing power. Is that correct as well?
Yeah, it is. One of the early phases of cloud computing before we got there was distributed computing and resource sharing throughout for those distributed databases as well, and other systems, other computing systems that exist out there. With the cloud, it's an unlimited pool of resource, right? Resource pooling is one of the key characteristics of cloud computing, and that elasticity to be rapid at any given point in time, to scale up, scale down based on what you need it's unmatched.
Unbelievable. Quite a few questions. Let's try to get through some more of them. Obvious question is going to get asked today, and a very, very good one. What risks are involved, and what are some of the main challenges for cloud computing? Maybe from an education perspective and from a IT professional perspective.
There's always risks. Every industry, every company needs to assess what type of data they have, what type of data is going to move. If you're in the health industry, there's health contingencies. There's procedures that you have to follow. A lot of the cloud providers actually do have guidelines and are certified for those type of data to move your information across to the cloud as well. So you do have to assess. Challenges moving, specifically if you have a lot of older apps, developing older platforms, migration can be a challenge, not impossible. And stage movement. Most movement to the cloud takes a hybrid approach, where you move some of your services, where you rebuild some of your services to the cloud as well, and you move gradually. But there are challenges, but those challenges are specific to industry, to organizations, but they're not without solutions.
Nice. I mean, to speak more specifically on this subject, we have another question really kind of talks around that. I mean, what about the security and privacy, laws, are there not dangers of breaching privacy rules, in terms of data, student outcomes, all this kind of stuff. How, what kind of challenges have we got in terms of security?
Security, and again, that's another good question, and that's another challenging area to look at. However, one of the ways that they've sort of assisted in this is the data center storage and locations. Going through my research as well and looking at the different countries, different institutions, specifically at the country level, have certain rules on certain data where we can move, like the European Union. You need certain data to stay within the EU. And then Google has its data centers and its servers for its G Cloud platform across Europe. Same thing with Amazon. So when you deploy it in the cloud, you have the ability to have your data restricted within those zones, or what is called availability zones. So your information stays within the zones that it's supposed to stay based on whatever compliance that you have to meet.
Okay. Interesting question in terms of is cloud computing an area that I should be investing in?
You should be
Oh,
invested
I
in
like
Amazon.
that question.
You should be invested in Amazon.
You should have been invested in Amazon a while ago.
Yeah.
Black Friday's coming up this Friday. You better get your shares before Friday.
Yeah, it is. It's a budding area, but yeah, it's an area that again, it's not as immature as most people might think, and it is still a confusing topic. If someone hears about cloud, it still confuses, and most people are able to associate cloud computing with software as a service and Office 365 and G Cloud. But services that we use every day, and the example that I give is Netflix. Everybody uses it, but
every day.
Nobody stops to think how it works. But it all runs in the cloud. It all is built in the cloud currently. So
exactly. And the cloud, by the way, is a massive storage room in probably an emerging market, or possibly a former Eastern European bloc, or huge rooms that we're having storing this space. Excuse me. Now, the last question as we finish off, which kind of in the same vein as we come to our conclusion today, is what do you think are some of the implications of cloud computing on banking and finance, in brackets blockchain, fintech, etc.?
I think it's exciting. It goes hand in hand. Again, and financial institutions have specific rules and regulations related to data movement, privacy. In terms of resource, at least in Canada, from what I could think about, and having colleagues who work in financial and banking, a lot of those industries are moving towards cloud, and it's a hybridization. So they've built the private cloud holdings in-house to streamline a lot of their processes as well, and use public cloud wherever it's allowed based on whatever compliances that they have to follow. So it has huge implications for those industries as well.
Okay, lovely. My last question for today, Karl, is now that you've wrapped up your degree, you finished, you were in Liverpool where I met you for summer graduation, so the dust has settled now, and you've kind of been able to have a deep breath and take it all in. What's the future hold for you, Karl? And what do you look to do with your master's degree?
The future it's exciting. I've been doing a couple things. At least one part of my research, which most people might have been aware, is that I've built an actual prototype of a platform for an infrastructure cloud computing platform using, again, affordable systems, using an open source private platform to emulate as much as I can of the public cloud. So one of the things that I've been working on over the summer is expanding that system, taking it up a notch, taking it up to scale, and building an actual full private cloud deployment for my department in terms of our programs, our IT programs, our students, which I've built. And we're looking to move into a pilot phase, at least in the next semester, early next year, to get students deploying instances, deploying VMs, requesting services, service offering, networks offering, storage offering, and move it through, which is something that the entire program level is looking to do in the future, is to move anything that's configurable, anything that requires a virtual machine, requires an environment, should be manageable and should be deployed and should be run as a service directly from our platform.
Exactly. So in the future, hopefully we can hit you up at karlscloudconsultancy.com or karlscloudconsultancycanada.com, and hopefully we're going to see you moving and shaking, as I'm sure that we are, and we're very thankful that you're going to be doing a lot of this work within the educational sphere, which is often neglected. So we appreciate that. Thank you very much, Karl, for your insight today. I hope you've enjoyed the session, and thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. It was a great session.
Thank you. And thank you very much to our audience members from all over the world. Some really fantastic questions. I hope it's got you thinking critically about the steps that you need to make in your institutions, your organizations, how you can unleash the potential in your career through attacking some very specific issues within IT and education. My name is Joe O'Brien. This has been a University of Liverpool online program. Thank you very much to Hugo, for our producer. Thanks again, Karl, and thank you to our audience. Good evening.